wiping their eyes in the rear view. Like black hole sun in the sky, why the fuck won't you come when I need you? Well, this moment in time is as close as we'll be and as far as I'll meet you. Two windows in between us, new moon in the house of Venus. One stranger who sees you and reads your features knows that your alibi might be tight, but it's not quite leak-proof. So if you're sitting at the light and you're crying in your car, just know that I see you. And it's a 50-50 that I'm bloodshot, gun-shy, once bitten, twice tried, ribs pried wide to the sky till I'm see-through.
That's you, in case you don't recognize yourself.
You don't think I see you struggling to breathe, but I do. I see you stumble in your everyday grief like I do. I try, but I do. I'm twice bitten too. My mind's split in two. My knuckles bright white from the 10 to the 2. And the song in my head is the theme for a fugue. A state of decay through the filter of corporate news, where they edit the grays and the blues. They whitewash the brown till they drown out the natural hues. And then it's just another fact to refuse, that the corporate ladder's for hanging the company noose. Consider it one of your perks, after all it's communal in use. So you can come and hang till your legs go limp and they're shaking you loose. Now you watch 5 co-workers opt for the alternate exit, neatly suspended above where you wolf down your food. And your company gets its incentives embellished by harping on wellness, suggesting you'd best take time for your mental health after your 14 hours are through. Like we gave you a bottle to piss in and fixed up a noose on the crossbeam. Christ, what more can we do? So if you struggle to breathe any moment that you aren't asleep, then remember, most of Americans fear for their savings, fear for their shelter, fear for their babies. You aren't the fringe of exception, but rather a perfect example of capital's rule. And you're far less alone than the ruling class tells you is true. You're far less alone than the ruling class tells you is true. I see you crying in your cars, but I do.
Our society and our world are full of these invented and built up and contrived facades. And sometimes some people come along with a hammer and smash that facade. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade.
Welcome to the future. Shit where you please. The Wi-Fi's killer, but there's no more bees. So there's hardly any flowers, there are very few trees, and you'll pay $1,000 for some honey for your tea. But we got these awesome collars, mine's an Apple Model 3. It allows for better movement than the Tesla X Elite. It lets you customize the ads that it implants in every dream. And for premium subscribers, doesn't shock you in your sleep. But it doesn't stop there. It can analyze your speech, and if it hears disinformation, then it notifies police. It's a swift re-education, but it knocks you off your feet like your booster every 7th week. I faced the future boldly with 2 eager open eyes, and I picked a couple nuggets up that blew my fucking mind. Like you can taxidermy someone while they're technically alive, and they'll shine when it's election time. See, the Democratic voter base will pay them zero. Never mind if voting for the scarecrow is a vote along their party lines. They could stare into its marble eyes and claim there's something dignified. Unlike real politicians, this one doesn't need an oxygen or kit supply. But its function is the same as those who came before. The goals are never misaligned. It still spends all its working time performing pre-recorded fleecing sessions where it sugarcoats your slow and hungry genocide, while pouring billions into Nazi coffers, all the while selling you the story that we're moments till the MiGs arrive. So fuck it, ask Zelensky if he'll help replace our leaded pipes. Watch a fleet of Penske's show stacks of bills in every size. Guess it only took a black sun and a couple Hiles. Honorary goose step and some Nazi boots a quarter mile, all while Biden sneers his sordid smile. I don't know what was in this morning's vial, but it makes him stare 1,000 yards through all the prompters and the cards like he can smell the nearest child. His eyes are wide and wild, wider than the grave in which another 1,000 families were tossed in as I typed until they rose up to the sky unceremoniously piled. Which sort of flies right in the face of all this network ticker tape where the American economy has superhuman vitals.
And sometimes some people come along with a hammer.
See, I like to think my trial's gonna play like a recital. I'll denounce the world around me and accuse the most entitled, who weaponize their titles, whose pull is something title, who'd starve us all to death to best delight their blighted idol. So they might destroy the record, and I will never get to vinyl. So my word is not immortal, but it's final.
It's a brilliant, powerful hammer. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade.
When you are not with where majority of Americans are, then, you know, that is extreme. That is an extreme way of thinking.
you be. And a part of me wished I could set myself aside, just let you take the ride, just chalk the rest up to destiny. I could let you believe that the only restraints in life are the size of your dreams. Let you believe each kid grows up with the world at their feet. When I know too well it's open season, I know they're taking stock and raising stocks and raising stock. And I'm simply not here to sit and watch as you learn the lesson all cogs are taught. Keep your head down and keep to task and just keep on blocking the rest of it all out. Just keep on with the rest of the herd of a million adjacent oblivious workers. The forest unseen for the trees, and the trees unseen for the fallout. Now what's more damning, baby, the truth or the ignorance? Fuck it, I honestly wonder if I see the answer so well. Baby, believe me well, I know it's scary, I scare myself. If I could find a way out of my head, I would run like hell. I would ditch this body politic, mindless occupant somewhere far from the dismal abyss. In the tranquil crystalline bliss of the beach, I could rest with the rest of the shells. And if anyone asks I'm anywhere else, if I'm really needed, just light the candle, then read the book and then ring the bell. Oh, my untarnished heart, my little perfect soul, this world will melt your mercy down so they can sell its gold. This world will take your worth and then demand 1,000-fold. It's full of greedy pigs who'll eat you out of house and home. They'll strip your bank account and sweep you somewhere down the road, and then return to eat your tent and shitty bike you rode. Your bottled water, only shoes and coat and broken phone. Then smiling in your face, they'll tell you that the shelter's closed.
When you are not with where majority of Americans are, then, you know, that is extreme. That is an extreme way of thinking.
Hoped you would never find out, knew that you had to know. Pulling what's left of my mind out, trying to tell you so. I tried to block the light out, knew you could feel its glow. I've been here holding my hands out, trying to keep you close. Trying to keep you Oh, my untarnished heart, my little perfect soul, this world will melt your mercy down so they can sell its gold. This world will take your worth, then demand 1,000-fold. I tried to block the light just so I could keep you close.
Just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me. Us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Who are these people?
It's us. We're these people.
I love that intro. I love that intro so much.
I'm here with a different co-host this time, Oz LaFave.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice. How are you, friend?
What's good? And you hear Nick say this all the time. The United States is the most propagandized country in the world.
We are so fucked, you guys. Again, I'm sorry for being cynical, but seriously, we're fucked. We are fucked. We are well and truly fucking fucked.
Just appreciate all the work that you do and the platforms that you all are providing.
Hey, you. Doing good. How are you guys doing?
And as independent media, we have a responsibility to be, we don't hide our bias, obviously, but we must stay true to the facts.
What's up, Ian?
Cheers and salutations. Smoke them if you got them.
But I am here with a man that I've been waiting to talk to for the last couple of years, Nico House.
As an educator, what I would suggest is that, first of all, podcasts like these are made.
So you need to be an example for the people and for the future, knowing that your words can actually change the future.
What do you feel? What would Kwame Ture feel we would have to do?
Well, politics is every day of every minute. You have to be aware of what's going on. Not voting on one day, so the vote has never meant anything. So I'm not a Democrat.
See, I would call that guy the Black Obama.
No. The issues that we talk about listen to us.
As always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
INN News.
It is Wednesday, my dude.
Close the screens. Close the screens.
Yay.
Close the screens.
No, don't close the stream. Don't do it. Don't do it. No. We're here. We did it.
Just for people who are like, what is Collin saying? Basically, Reef has other streams open. From my view, is kind of blocking him.
Yeah.
As he is the engineer. So I'm asking him to turn off or shut down some of the screens so that I could see and read. Because I'm
blind.
Not blind, but
close enough.
No, but it's computer and it's a long day and my eyes tired.
Yeah.
So they get
agreed.
Do all the things. But anyway, how are you?
I'm doing okay. You know, power was out yesterday. Internet was out yesterday. Nothing like from, like 11:30 to like 5 p.m. Having the power out in Florida. Great. Not having AC at the hottest part of the day is like the best thing. So
sure.
Anywho's a what's it? You ready for stories? We did some stories.
No.
Me either.
No.
Too bad.
So guys, I'm gonna level with you. I'm in a rut.
We'll fix them though. We'll get them out. We threw the rope down.
I've had the last couple of months. It's just been a drag. Trying to find stories that are interesting and somewhat relevant and stuff that not everyone else is doing. I don't want to keep talking about Israel every fucking week. I don't want to talk about Trump every fucking week. I don't want to talk about the Republican Party every fucking week. But it almost looks like we have to because those are
the big things. So
right. But I feel that it's taken too much attention from other things which, as you know, are kind of harder to find.
Sure.
And there's only so much time in the day in order to get stories prepped on top of the other stuff that I need to do for my actual job. That being said, I did 5 stories. And I might just do some local stuff, at least DC, for me being local, maybe for a while, because I don't have anything else to talk about. But first story tonight will this is more or less a continuation from last week. I talked about how basically how Muriel Bowser, our mayor, is basically now known as is basically has been a tool for the establishment, and she's becoming more of a tool of the establishment in something that I mentioned last week, but it's gotten some local attention here in terms of a ballot initiative that, as of yesterday, our council voted in a majority vote to pause. So you're wondering what Initiative 82 is. Well, I'll explain more later, but Initiative 82 was a bill passed twice by DC voters to increase the minimum wage for service workers. So the idea is that they would make minimum wage, which for us is $17, by the next 2 years. So actually, some of it, part of that wage was supposed to go up next month, but because of the economy, Bowser is now saying to repeal this ballot initiative. Again, she's a Democrat, so
Yeah.
Going against the will of the voters. Yeah. So I think it's kind of interesting to talk about because, as we say all the time, this is why you should be focused. This is why you should focus on local politics, because this is the type of stuff that affects you all, and something like this might happen to you all. So it's very important for you to be engaged in what's going on in your towns and cities, especially with your councilmen, because they control the purses, they control what happens in your towns and cities. So I hope this is more a cautionary tale to, yes, it's important to focus on federal politics. You should probably be more focused on what's happening on the local level. So I think there is a benefit to learning more about what's happening on the local level. Hopefully we can talk more about this stuff in the future. But I decided to bring it given that this is a continuation of last week. And then later on tonight, we have another expose from Robert Inglikesh doing the damn thing over at MintPress of him reporting that Israel. So last week, we've talked about how basically the powers that be are privatizing the aid that is allegedly coming in to help Palestinians.
Gaza Humanitarian Foundation.
Right. Well, now Robert Inglikesh is reporting that Israel is purposely looting the aid, is stealing the aid, with basically the IDF turning a blind eye to it. So we'll get more into that later on tonight. And then what did you bring, Reef?
Well, I brought some interesting stuff that I've not seen people talk about. We're gonna go into BUKELE'S background, right? You've seen stuff about Seacott. You've seen him being called a dictator, right? We're gonna get into that. Trump's favorite. So you might be surprised about where he's from and how much betrayal he's willing to commit. So we're gonna talk about that. And then I brought an Inglikesh about Microsoft trying to kill all of us. So we're gonna look at that. So I just really appreciated my thumbnail. The XP background is chef's kiss. So having used that background a million gazillion times, it brings me nostalgic joy. So
what do you mean millions? You're younger than me. What do you mean millions?
The XP, dude, it's the XP background, bro. I was like IBM Model M for a while, I remember those gateways. Remember the gateway with the cow on it? Remember that? Putting the floppy disks in.
I do, but you're much younger than me, so
yeah. Well, I had old shit. What do you want from me? We poor out here. We got to get the hand-me-downs. Shit. XP still probably runs great, honestly. Thing was a brick house. All right, you ready for your first one?
Yes, but before we do that, the reason why we report on the stories that we cover is we want to try and give you guys a different perspective for what you might hear even in other independent media outlets. We try to report on stories that they're not necessarily reporting on or supplement some of the stuff that they're reporting on. But those stories, unfortunately, are not very popular and not very favorable to the algorithm or AdSense on YouTube. So as a result, we are demonetized permanently, I guess, at this point. So obviously, well, you keep keeping hope alive that we actually might be remonetized. And it's yet to happen. And I don't think it's ever going to happen.
Not having platforms be connected to how we get our monies. So,
Right. So, but that being said, we do appreciate and we know the value of you guys supporting us, and many of you support us on the regular every week, and we really appreciate it. But as we say, take care of your families, take care of your communities, take care of yourselves first before you give to us. That being said, if you care to give so that we're able to keep the lights on, and to be completely transparent, all the money that is donated will primarily go towards our bills to kind of offset the cost of Indie. I have to say it's Indie who's paying for the programs in order for us to use to produce these programs, and they get expensive. So help defray some of the costs, upset the cost of that. And then any extra we want to support other colleagues in the network to upgrade their tech so that they're able to produce more content. So if you want to donate, if you have a smartphone, you can scan the QR code you see on your screen, or you can go to the Ko-fi link that you see at the bottom of your screen there. If you're in the YouTube chat, you can type in !donate, all one word. The Ko-fi link will pop up. You can click on it and you can donate right there. Anything as small as $1 will help. If you don't want to give through Ko-fi, you can also give via CashApp, PayPal, and Substack. All those links are in the description below, and they always will be there. And shout out to anyone who gives at any given point. Your name, regardless of how much you give, will be on the Wall of Fame. And all the highlighted names are like super fans who give generously to us. So your names will be highlighted there. And we will promise at some point to build our soundboard by giving you guys an exclusive clip that Reef will work on. Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I got a whole phone. He's gonna get a whole phone soundboard.
Right.
Just for the fans.
But as we said, we do this out of love. We don't do this for the money. We do this out of, caring for you guys and wanting to give you guys a different perspective, different views of media. That being said, if you want, the best way, if you don't have the money to give, is through word of mouth, and more specifically to like, share, and subscribe to our content. And at least, well, maybe the algorithm might be favorable to us at some point. But mostly it's to help us grow, and so more people can get to know us and get to hear these stories, and I hopefully appreciate them as much as you guys do. So thank you guys for supporting us this long, and let's get started, shall we?
Yep. Cool.
All right. So our first story tonight.
And my files.
Screen.
You're welcome. Sorry.
So our first story tonight. This is kind of a part 2 from the Muriel Bowser segment that I did last week. By the way, if you want to learn more about that, actually, that might be a good basis to watch this. You can go to our playlist and check that out. I think it's called Mayor 1%, if I remember correctly. But I mentioned briefly in that segment about Initiative 82. Sorry. Initiative 82 was voted on twice by DC voters to essentially increase the minimum wage of service workers so that eventually they'll get an actual minimum wage to, in our case, $17 an hour. Right now it's at 10, and it was scheduled to go up to 12 next month. However, Mayor Bowser thought it would be a good idea to overstep the will of the workers, voters rather, and workers by appealing it. So basically, the powers that be are looking to not give people their money. So obviously, this has caused somewhat of a conundrum in DC right now, especially among the the service worker sector. There obviously it's the issue regarding paying workers, especially in that industry, is very mixed, as you can imagine. So but I wanted to give you guys, we try to be nuanced here. We'll try and give both sides. And then obviously I'm going to give my take, and I'm sure you guys will appreciate. You guys will, I'm sure, be able to make your takes in the chat. So let's get into it. So let's start with, I believe this is this Fox? Yeah, I believe this is a Fox News segment. So local Fox, not the big Fox,
right?
Where they go into a little bit more information regarding this appeal of Initiative 82. So let's check it out.
D.C. Council voting today to pause Initiative 82.
And that's the gradual elimination of the tip to minimum wage. It comes as Mayor Bowser pushes to repeal the act altogether.
Yeah, D.C. News Now's Marielle Carbone is live at the Wilson Building. And Marielle, this has been a very heated issue since it first went on the ballot in 2022.
Yeah, Toast, and the market has been, and today really no different. Now, this vote, it simply pauses the next wage increase from going into effect, which was set to happen July 1st. But workers we spoke to here today, they fear this will lead to the eventual repeal of I-82. In a heated moment outside council chambers, tipped workers demanding council members honor Initiative 82.
Initiative 82 has absolutely increased my pay.
Rochelle Young is a bartender at Aslan on 14th Street.
My employer is not willing to pay me more than what is the minimum, and so the raises provided by Initiative 82 are essential.
So she doesn't want to see I-82 paused.
A pause on Initiative 82 is basically akin to taking a step towards a repeal.
But that's what happened.
Mr. Chairman, there are 8 yeses and 4 noes.
Tuesday, council members voted to pause the next wage bump laid out under Initiative 82. The voter passed a measure that phases out the tipped minimum wage.
Pausing the July 1st wage increase allows the council to fully consider the data and the impact.
Still, some council members are weary. Brianne Nadeau voted against the pause.
People make plans when they're told they're getting a raise.
The pause comes as Mayor Muriel Bowser pushes a full repeal of I-82 in an effort to make it easier to do business in D.C. Restaurant owners claim I-82 has made it more expensive to operate, leading to closures.
20-plus restaurants have announced that they're going to close this year.
Rebecca Paxton, research director for the Employment Policies Institute, says the data shows I-82 is hurting wages.
Certainly the law boosted the cash wage that workers are getting paid by employers, but unfortunately it's had an adverse effect on tips.
Now, as for that full repeal of I-82, that is under the mayor's 2026 budget proposal, and people on both sides of this issue plan to testify tomorrow at a public hearing on the budget, so we'll keep you updated on where that full repeal stands as it moves forward. Reporting live from the Wilson Building, I'm Marielle Carbone, DC News Now.
Right. So obviously people are upset, and rightly so, because as it was reported, right now the minimum wage for service workers is at 10. It's supposed to go up to 12 next month, but obviously with the repeal, there's right now the council is saying that they want to put on pause until October to put to a vote. But obviously, as one of the councilmen said, people were banking on getting that raise next month. So if they do repeal it, what happens to the workers as far as this promised pay? Or if they do decide to go ahead with it, do they get retroactive pay? These are questions those are questions I asked immediately. So but obviously this is a big old mess, and you're hearing a few people were saying, oh, we have to look at the data. We have to look at the data to see if this is worth pursuing or not. I have some thoughts about that too. But initially, do you have any thoughts? Didn't you used to work in service briefly at one point?
Couple of places.
So what do you think about this from that angle?
It's the classic, the rest of the world doesn't do tips, first of all. They actually just pay their workers real wages,
right.
So this whole thing of then they always bring this up whenever the minimum wage is brought up. This whole thing about the tips, and this is going to hurt the tip workers. And it's like, okay, I don't care. Pay me real money. Tips suck. I mean, I know they've talked about like tips being like male workers don't receive tips nearly as much, you know, like there's a whole bunch of like gender and race stuff brought into like tipping culture, you know,
right? Which we talked about last week, according to John Jeter's article regarding Muriel Bowser, but he mentioned some aspects of I-82. He mentioned that there is a lot of sexism and racism in regards to, as you said, tipping culture. Like typically it was reported that white men generally would get more tips versus women and people of color. And then, you know, but then even that, the idea of like people relying on tips, that's assuming people will tip what they're supposed to. Like we've seen like even online assholes who may have like a free $100 meal somewhere and they might tip like $2. You know, so we've seen bullshit like that before, you know, so they make it so it's just kind of not surprising, but it's the idea of like, well, we can't afford to give people more money because it would affect people tipping. But you're making the assumption that people will tip appropriately, which many people do not if they choose to tip at all.
Right.
So, so I think it's kind of asinine to make that assumption. But we'll get into more of that. The fuck shit.
All out of money.
So we'll get into more of the fuck shit in a second. But what?
Squidward service, bro. You gotta respect Squidward. You know.
Oh, true.
More and more relatable Squidward as you get older. You know.
Right.
Anyway.
So let's get more into it with some of these council members.
There you go.
Of what they had to say. So as it was reported that 8 out of the 12 voted to pause it.
Of course.
And one of them is here, Robert White. So I pulled this from Twitter. So United Here Local 25 tweeted out Robert White, and he's the at-large DC councilman, seen pledging to honor Initiative 82. Today, he will cast the deciding vote to stall I-82, robbing workers of a mandated wage increase and voting against the will of 75% of DC voters. Shame. So he was one of the ones. He was one of the ones who ended up voting for the pause. And when when he got called out on it, and the thing is, a lot of people like him. He actually tried to run for mayor, but you know, as I tell people, do not trust any of these bitches, even if you like them.
Politician opens their mouth, they're fucking lying to you.
Right.
You know.
Right. So, so he tweeted, I guess after he made the vote, I make decisions based on what I believe is right for the people most affected, even when it's hard. I know some may disagree, and I respect that. But I won't trade conviction for votes. So let's see what he has to say when I guess he was called out in terms of his vote. So you could play the clip in the tweet.
And you know, a lot of folks will say, "Well, if you don't stand with us on this, then never have our support again." I want folks to support. I really do. I gotta stand up for.
Yeah, of course you fucking do. You want people to support everything you do.
Like my family, who are the ones that I really ran to represent, and so. The thing that's never going to persuade me is the politics. The thing that will persuade me is people and the data behind it. And here's what I'm finding is that, and it's
you know what? Start it. Can you turn it up and maybe start again? I think it's low for me.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah, hold on. Let me do this real quick.
I think for everyone else it might be fine, but I didn't see anything. But
yeah, let me make sure you get some gain as well. How about that? Everyone gets gain. Everybody gets gain. Cool.
And you know, a lot of folks will say, "Well, if you don't stand with us on this, then never have our support again." I want folks to support. I really do. I gotta stand up for average people, people like my family, who are the ones that I really ran to represent. And so the thing that's never going to persuade me is the politics. The thing that will persuade me is people and the data behind it. And here's what I'm finding is that, and it's inconclusive, right? The vast majority of people that I speak to who are not affiliated with either side, who work in this industry, the majority of people who I'm able to reach, who are not affiliated with either side, have said to me that they have lost income since I-82 went into effect.
Name them.
The majority of restaurants that I'm seeing close are the full
Which ones?
service ones. And we are seeing the federal government, Congress is about to pass a bill that's going to impact tip wage workers. So if I'm concerned, and I am, that we're losing jobs and that a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of folks in the industry are losing wages, then I'm nervous and I've got to figure out what do we do to make sure that we have the highest take-home pay for people and we have the largest percentage, the largest possible number of smaller independently owned restaurants. Now, none of us can say honestly that we have 100% the right answer here, because we don't have enough information.
I bet a couple people could.
Have tells me I need to be concerned and figure out what is in the best interest of the people in the city who are working. So I respect that we have a difference of opinion here. I respect that you believe fully that your view on this is right. I believe that my view on this is right. That I'm starting to see everyday people lose wages because of this. And I've got to figure out, what do I do? Not figure out who do I like the most, who do I want to side with. If I had to decide that, I'd be with you. But I've got to make sure that my decision is based on the people.
What?
So I've got to get upstairs, but I want to make sure that I hear you. I've talked to folks on every side of this issue as much as possible to understand as much as I can. We've got a lot to learn as we pause and sort of gather what is best for the city. But you know, we're not going to agree on every issue, but there are going to be most issues we're going to stand together on. And I think today is one that we're not. And I recognize it. You don't love that. I wish we were on the same side too. You were running.
Okay, so he mentioned. So I should have put this up, but this is what he did in order to collect data to hear from the people. Now, he might have done more, but this is what he did on Twitter. He posted a Google form and asked people, if you work in the industry, I want to hear from you. Now, just looking at his Twitter in response to a lot of this, I think a lot of them were bots who were saying, oh, I worked at this restaurant and I was not making much wages, so I didn't agree with I-82. It looked more bots to me. And he was responding to them as if they were actual people. Now, they could be, but I found it kind of interesting that he decided to do a Google form with no verification if they worked at a restaurant, if they ever did, if they ever were affected. So just given the optics of what I saw on Twitter, I thought that was kind of shitty, you know, and not the best way to kind of gather the data that you needed to determine if repealing I-82 or putting it on pause, rather, would be the right thing. But he kept saying, oh, people are losing money. And I called this out on Twitter. Now, well, here's the thing. Could it be that workers are losing money is because the owners do not want to pay?
That's who he's talking to.
Their workers, because they know that they have to increase their base salary and they don't want to. So they're like, okay, well, I don't want to increase it, so I'm just going to cut your hours. That, I think, is more plausible than using the initiative as a reason and restaurants closing as a reason for putting this thing on pause. And then the other thing is, more importantly, look at this economy. Like, no one is going out to eat in this. Like, look, I have the money. I don't remember the last time that I've gone. Like, really, the only time when I sit down and eat at a restaurant now is when I'm traveling. Like, when I'm home, I don't really go out to eat. And even when I do, it's like Chipotle or something like that. And even that's getting expensive. Like, I remember back in the day, like almost 20 years ago, you can get like a burrito bowl and like a soda for like under $10, and now it's more closer to 20, and you get less food. So people are not going out to eat, and people are not going out to eat in the same way anymore. And it's funny because I hear, or at least I've heard, that DC, because it's more or less federal workers here, is recession proof. But I think even now with COVID and the fact that things have gotten way more expensive, even here, I would argue that it's forced people, even people who make money, to kind of scale back a little bit. Or I hear, at least in my circles, people complaining more about how expensive things are gone. So yeah, I don't really necessarily buy the idea of workers are complaining that they're getting paid less, without saying that they're probably getting paid less because the owners are not giving them what is owed to them and are cutting their hours as a result because they need to meet their bottom line. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
And there were other people who thought the same thing, or at least in a similar way as I did. At Paxton_Sonia said, overturning the will of the people for a second time is crazy. How are you any better than congressional Republicans if you disregard DC's right to vote and choose? I voted for you for mayor because I believed you had the backbone she doesn't. I guess we'll see today. And he did not prove that. So, at Singing Chef 85 tweeted, this is all to response to Robert White. You need to find out who's been paid off by lobbies, because I've testified for one fair wage and called them out entirely. The lobbies are why we have service fees that allow the owners to steal what guests considers a tip. The confusion was intentional. Look up articles about it. They're absolutely disgusting how they talk about tip staff, and they just want to keep us enslaved. So Robert actually responded to this, and he asked, can you share more about what real respect and fairness would look like for you in this industry? I want to make sure the path forward reflects that. And then Tara responded, 1, open transparency about any service fees. It is not a tip and goes to owners. Also, owners need to be transparent about tip pools. I've had 30K stolen when working Timo DC. I guess that's a restaurant. I didn't check. And luckily, I kept my printouts of my tips to show the state attorney. This is why 82 is so important. So yeah, so the idea of she saying that, like, you know how at certain places, just regular places now, they might just ask you for a tip just because, you know, like, she's saying that a lot of that money, if they do tip, is not going to the workers, it's going to the owners. So that should be something that they should be looked at as well, which I haven't necessarily heard about. This is because I kind of I'm not to dox myself, but I'm in between wards. So I essentially have 2 congressmen who represent me, but this is the one that I like better. So this is from Janice Lewis George, who tweeted yesterday, today the council is voting on the plan to pause Initiative 82, which helps ensure tip workers can earn a living wage. Swipe right to learn why suspending I-82 would harm workers and undermine the will of district voters. So she goes into it. Today, the council is voting on a plan to suspend Initiative 82. The restaurant industry is skewing the facts to delay businesses paying workers a living wage. Here's what you need to know. The restaurant industry has been growing since I-82 was enacted. Since 2022, DC has seen over 100 full-service restaurants open, and growth has steadily continued over the last few years. Now, granted, I do know that there have been restaurants that have closed, especially within the last couple of months. There's a restaurant within a walking distance, like a couple of blocks from me, that just closed down 2 months ago. But she's saying, even in the midst of restaurants closing, there have been others that have been opening up, probably in their place, which I have seen. So you can make the argument either or, but it's not like I haven't seen restaurants pop off, just go down entirely. Like, I've seen other restaurants coming in too. Anyway, In 2024, DC saw its highest number of new restaurants open in over a decade. Wages and employment are both growing. Since I-82 was implemented, tip workers have seen their wages double. DC Food Services employment has grown by 4% since May 2023, outpacing both Virginia and Maryland. And last slide she did, pausing Initiative 82 would harm workers. Restaurants are experiencing real challenges, including rising prices and families tightening their wallets. The council needs to work on making our economy work for everyone while honoring our commitment to workers and the overwhelming will of workers. And she tweeted this after the vote. Today's vote was not the outcome we wanted, but our goal remains the same. Tomorrow, we organize, keep raising our voices, and keep pushing for real solutions that support our restaurants without compromising workers' right to dignity and a living wage. So I felt she was decent. I felt she tried to give a little bit, again, more nuance to it, but it does sound like she's actually like looking at it from the worker side and is actually supporting them in this case. So I did appreciate Janice for at least sharing this online. So I said I'll show you both sides. So we're going to look at essentially the restaurant lobby right now and see what they have to say in regards to the repeal or the pause of I-82. So this is Fox 5. So we're going to hear what this idiot has to say, and then we'll continue.
Joining us now is President and CEO of the Restaurant Association of Metropolitan Washington, Sean Townsend, who's been, of course, following this very closely. And I know, Sean, your group has said that by the end of the year, if things were to continue, about 40% of D.C. restaurants would shutter their doors. What do you make of this latest breaking news out of the D.C. Council today?
Councilmember McDuffie, we supported the measure that he introduced last week to pause the $2 increase that was slated for July 1st. And what you heard today was overwhelmingly the members agreed that it is now a time to pause and take a look at to assess the impact of Initiative 82 and figure out where we go from here. The mayor has inserted a proposal to repeal Initiative 82 in her growth agenda, and also there's a federal measure that will soon be implemented once it's passed in the House to not tax tips. And so we need to understand the implications of Initiative 82 with all of the closures happening and workers now saying that they're receiving less take-home pay, but also this no tax on tips. What does that mean for our local economy, for our local food service industry?
Pause there for a second.
Very difficult because, as you point out,
so he mentioned that there is a bill currently right now that tip workers will not get taxed on their tips. I talked about last week, and I'm going to bring up that section again after this, but keep that in the back of your head because that's kind of misleading of what he said there. But go ahead.
Now, you're talking about a livable wage in a part of the country that is excruciatingly, painfully expensive, prohibitive for some. That would rise that minimum wage and make it, quote, livable, right? To go back to the tip wages would be to go back to the old way. It would repeal, to your point, a referendum that was put on the ballot by the people of D.C., voted by the people of D.C. And when we here at Fox 5 have put up our Insta polls, we've asked the people, do you want to see it go back? We still get this 50-50 split where people don't feel as though it should be repealed, as the mayor has suggested. It is hard because I hear what you're saying. Small businesses are absolutely suffering as well, but you're going against what the voters voted for, and that in lies the issue for the D.C. Council. They'd have to go against their own electorate here. So is there a compromise anywhere?
We're open to having these conversations. One thing I will point out is that D.C. has one of the highest, if not the highest, minimum wage in the country. And so I hear the term often roll back or go back to $5 and change. To be clear, no one in the industry makes $5 and change or ever did. If the server or the tip worker makes that amount an hour, it is the responsibility of the employer to make that worker whole up to the minimum wage, whatever that is. So no one's actually making $5 an hour. However, where we are now at $10 an hour, no one's making $10 an hour. They're still making the minimum wage because the tip credit system has not been completely eliminated. And so the employer still has a responsibility to make that employee whole. What we're simply asking the council to to do is take a look at these incremental increases and how they are impacting the restaurants. We want to make sure that workers are getting a fair and decent living wage, but we also want to make sure that the restaurant is still able to survive in order to pay workers that minimum wage. What we're also seeing is that workers aren't getting the tips that they used to under this new system of the incremental increases. And so I think it's a good time to just stop, pause, and take a look at things, and also understand the implications of federal legislation coming down the pipeline.
Should Initiative 82 have been, I don't think the word is rolled out, but at least better explained as it was put on the ballot? Because it seems as though so many people misunderstood what it meant, because there has been that rollback from some people who voted saying, wait a second, maybe I didn't understand this fully. And who was that onus on? Who should have better explained it? Was it the government? Was it the mayor, the council? Should it come from your association?
We'll continue to release data from a poll that we just did a couple weeks ago, and an overwhelmingly majority of DC voters who are likely to vote in 2026 said that if they knew what they knew now about Initiative 82, they would not have voted yes in favor of Initiative 82. And they also believe that it has been misunderstood this entire time since it's been rolled out. And so I think the goalpost has moved in terms of the 70% that voted for in favor of Initiative 82. I think there's an opportunity there to provide additional education, as you mentioned, so that people really understand what's happening right now to the industry and why workers are saying that they're receiving less take-home pay.
Well, Sean, we thank you for coming on the DMV Zone. I know this conversation will continue. Clearly, the council making their first vote here on at least holding back the increase of that minimum wage. And coming up, we're going to talk to some Axios reporters here who are reporting that sales, restaurant sales, and people going out to eat is coming down in the Washington, D.C. area, much to what you all have been saying as well. So, Sean, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
I have a couple of thoughts regarding what he said. He said that they have data that proves that overwhelmingly, if people understood the implications of I-82, that they would have voted no. Where is it?
Yeah.
Where is it? Number two, who did you ask? Because I think it's very important that we need to kind of see it, and that's the thing. It's like everyone, all these people are saying, "Oh, we have data. Oh, we have data. We want to see it, please." And we want to and again, and this is what people need to understand, especially with these lobbyist groups, they will come up with anything to side things their way. So it may not even be done independently or by a third party. A lot of these lobbies are connected to a lot of these data groups that would essentially cook up this data for them to side things in their favor. And it may not necessarily be from the perspective of the people who it affects. So that's one thing that they're saying, that people, I'm just saying this generally because, having kind of worked in or advocated in these circles, I know like kind of the tricks that they do is that sometimes when they ask for data, they're not asking actual people who are most affected.
Yeah, they're asking focus groups, so they're fucking, manipulating it one way or another.
Right. Or just even in the way how they word questions. I think essentially, it's meant in a lot of ways to cause confusion because, we've seen this all the time, just even in the regular elections, that there may be people on the right who might think that, Medicare for all might be like communism or whatever else, or socialism or whatever else. But if you ask them, like, would you support something as far as like, if you need to go to the doctor, and would you support the idea of having that be no cost to you as part of a universal healthcare package, then even people on the right would say yes. So I think it's a question of how things are worded for like the regular schmegular citizens that will actually understand the implications of what they're voting for, that they can make a more informed decision, which to a point, I kind of agree with what that guy was saying. But again, a lot of this stuff, again, I have to question where this data is coming from, because as you said, it's coming from a lot of focus groups that are meant to skew the information to work things in their favor, to make it more favorable to the corporations. So that's kind of where my concern is in regards to this data. But more importantly, and I probably will say this at the end, you're setting a bad precedent here. like everyone involved. You're basically saying to voters who voted for this twice, fuck your decision. We have the right to appeal it. Does that sound like a democracy to you? And again, and I felt this story was important because people complain, oh, Republicans do this bullshit. These are all Democrats who are doing this. And these are Democrats that are doing this on the local level. So, you know, so if you're not speaking up regards to how fuck shit Democrats are, you should be.
Yep.
You know, which is why I say to people, you need to watch what's going on the local level because you may not even know you're being screwed. And if this is happening to me in terms of in DC, this can happen anywhere. So this the other thing why I say is like when you vote for things and they pass, you don't just pat yourself on the back and call yourself a job well done and close the door and go home. You have to monitor and make sure that they don't overturn shit like they're trying to do right now. So it's a constant. So as you know, Kwame Ture says, you know, organizing is eternal. This is why it's eternal, because the powers that be are don't want you to have this stuff, and they have the money and the means to try and overturn things in a matter of you trying to bring them in. So it's a constant battle to ensure that, no, you're going to keep this in, and we're going to have our foot on your neck to make sure that it stays in place, if not make it better. So, so I felt that was important to kind of mention in terms of this. So I want to go back to what this guy was saying, you know, in terms of Trump is planning to like eliminate tax on tips. Very misleading. And I reported on this last week. This was pulled from the article that I read from Black Agenda Report. Donald Trump campaigning on eliminating taxes on tips. And while Jaharaman said the gesture is mostly symbolic, so again, he's kind of giving a wink, wink, nudge, nudge to tip workers. Only about a third of restaurant workers earn enough to pay taxes on their tips. So, so they continue, it's pandering, but Donald Trump is going to deliver a little bit of money for tip workers while Muriel Bowser is talking about rolling back their wages. Right. So, you know, so that's the kind of the point which that guy missed. Like, yeah, you repeal it, you're going to revert back to whatever level you're trying to revert it back to, who knows now, you know, but the money that they're making, depending on what it is not enough tipped anyway. So essentially, it's a nothing burger, essentially. It just cancels each other out, essentially. You make less money, but you won't get taxed on the tips. You know, so it's like, it makes no sense, at least to me. So I pulled this from Fox as well. So what they're saying, Amanda Michelle Gomez with United Here Local 25, she actually follows me on Twitter, by the way, which represents about 7,000 hospitality workers in the region, said they were deeply disappointed in the council members who voted to pause. United Here Local 25 supports those small businesses that need some help. We can do that through a tax credit, through rent relief, but we shouldn't do it by undermining workers who are counting on these wage increases, Gomez said. There were chants of don't cut our wages as the vote was underway. At one point, people were even removed from the chambers. So this was in the council building. One woman named Nikki, who said she has been a tip worker for the past decade, became emotional as the vote concluded. This is a pattern of not just a member, but mayor, but DC Council prioritizing the interests of business workers, owners over workers, and that needs to end, she added. So, so I think this is kind of appropriate, and especially right now we're in Pride Month. This was at station_ZZZ. Reminded that Mayor Bowser told GLAAD DC in her 2022 questionnaire that she would respect the results of Initiative I-82. Now she's proposing to repeal it in her budget. It is insane we are allowing elected officials to lie so flagrantly like this. Actually, if you can zoom in, so I can read what she said 3 years ago. So she was asked, do you support repealing the sub-minimum wage for tip workers? I will support, this is her words, I will support Initiative 82 if passed by district voters. In 2016, as part of my commitment to create pathways to the middle class for Washingtonians across all 8 wards, I signed the Fair Shot Minimum Wage Amendment Act of 2016 into law to raise the district's minimum wage to $15 per hour by 2020, which she did. The wage now stands at $15.50, which is the amount that tip workers are entitled to if they do not earn that amount through the sub-minimum wage plus tips. Still, there is a pitched debate about whether the tip minimum wage works for all tip workers, and to be sure, there is a case to be made on either side. So while I would prefer an approach to changing the tip wage that is thoughtful and carefully considered through the legislative process, if Initiative 82 passes, I will support its implementation.
If. But
Right.
not
Which
before
it did
it
pass.
does. Yeah.
Right. But it did pass twice. And she's looking to repeal it now because she's in bed with the donors and the owners of the restaurant industry and not caring for the workers. So yeah. So cautionary tale for you all. To be mindful of your local politicians because they do the same fuck shit as our federal one. And they have more impact on your life than probably your federal politicians do. So I thought it was important to kind of share that as a way for you guys to be aware of, even in your city or town, that this is the potential that can happen if you do not keep your politicians accountable. So we'll follow the story because I think it's very interesting to kind of see how this will go down. I think they'll have to vote in the fall to see if it will be repealed, because right now it is on pause. But as I said earlier, that people were expecting a raise. So now they have to wait, if not get it. So what's going to happen to them? What are they going to do? Especially now in this economy where things are getting more expensive, their pay is on pause. So, and as I said, people will go out to eat and don't tip, or don't tip well enough to warrant them going out to eat. So so I'll just say that, like, if you're going out and you can't tip your workers appropriately, and I'm not saying I'm sure, because I worked in the service industry for a minute too, like, you're gonna get bad service, maybe. I honestly, for me, I've never had service so bad that I felt like no one deserved a tip.
Yeah.
Like, general rule of thumb, at minimum 15%, even if the service is bad. And then 20% just normal. Right? And then if they go above and beyond, thank you, Sean. Speaking of tips.
Appreciate it, dog.
Great topic. But here's the thing. If you're going out to eat, you're not just paying for the food, you're paying for the service. And again, like, this is a way, we talk about taking care of your friends, taking care of your family, taking care of your neighbors. This is a way to do that. These workers may not get the money they need in order to make it. So by you tipping them and tipping them appropriately, you are supporting them in terms of paying their bills. If you can't afford to do that, then I have to question whether you should go out to eat, cook food at home. I'm sorry to say that, but I think people need to know that, because I feel there's a lot of privileged people who kind of use eating out. Oh, wow. So thank you, Margaret. So did you guys $50? Well, I think that might be the most we got in a minute.
No, definitely a big
but
donor
thank you,
there.
Margaret. But again, this is just a way I think of, we say, to take care of your community. Like, these workers are a part of your. Many of them might be your friends or your neighbors. So look, and it's grueling work. And I'm just saying, you should consider that. And again, to be fair, no one is saying to break your bank in order to support your neighbors that way. But what I am saying is, if you get decent service, if you're sitting down at a restaurant and you have a good time and the server wasn't an ass, tip them. Just tip them what they should be tipped. That's
And
all.
And
make
tipping culture so that you don't even have to worry about that. That'd be great.
Right. I mean, obviously, that should be the ultimate thing. Like, we should have a culture where everybody, regardless of their job, has a living wage and has dignity in their work. But we're not at that stage yet. So I'm just saying, tip well. Don't break your bank, obviously, but tip appropriately of what you get for what you're getting. Again, don't make a free $100 purchase and then give $3.
Yeah.
That's just very insulting. I mean, you could do it, but but I think that's just wrong for you to do. And again, no service is that bad or should be ever that bad for people to get crappy tips like that. So that's just my 2 cents, figuratively. But yeah, any last thoughts before we end the segment?
Nope. I mean, I just find it funny when they wonder why no one wants to work. Is very clear. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the idea of, restaurants closing and then making that argument of, we have to support. I get that to a point, but at the same time, we're in a tough economy just across the board. People are not eating out, in the same way that they're used to. People are kind of watching and yeah, housing is going up, transportation's going up, as I said earlier, even among my circles, and I work among people who are more well-to-do. They generally have money, and even they're saying, you know what, we can't just. They complain, things are just getting so much more expensive, and you're getting less quality of it. So if my well-to-do friends are saying that, then that's bad.
Yep.
So so I think we should. I hope our council members will take that approach in terms of trying to figure out, not even figure out, honor the votes, right? Honor the citizens of this district who voted to give workers dignity and ensure that they get what they deserve. So I hope they do, but we'll wait and see. And this is why talking about stories like this, even though I don't think it's problematic, is demonetized. So thank you guys again to our 2 wonderful donations that we received during the segment. If you want to give, if you haven't yet, or if you want to in the future, and especially anytime during the stream or in this clip, once we clip it out, you can scan the QR code that you see on your screen, or you can go to the link that you see at the bottom of your screen and type it in, and you can give on our Ko-fi account. You can also give on our PayPal, Substack, and Cash App. Those links will be in the description. So any amount helps, even as little as $1. But if you can give, and we know times are rough, the best way you can help support us is to like, share, and subscribe to our content. What do you guys think in this potential? What do you guys think in terms of this pause on suspension, essentially, of tip workers getting minimum wage? What do you think about that? But I think the bigger question is, why isn't this a larger discussion of how it's possible, even with ballot initiatives, which are meant to be, voter promoted, that the powers that be can essentially overturn that? What do you say that means in terms of our so-called democracy? So definitely be interested to hear what you guys think in the comments, even in the stream or on the segment. And thank you guys for watching.
Yeah, appreciate you, fam. All right, to the chats.
Yes, so a lot of you had some things to say about this.
To reset the slideshow, which means you probably just have to refresh your thing in a bit. I forgot to put a video in last night because I'm dumb. I'm a big old dummy, but it should be in there now. Hopefully. Slides decides to hate us occasionally. Anyway, what do you have?
While you do that, while you do that, I'll check out the comments. Sean, this is from Sean. I truly appreciate Collin and Reef's choices of topics news. Thank you. We try. That makes me feel a little better.
On the Substack, someone said, in Villa, please don't stop talking about Palestine. Was one of the comments. So appreciate you.
No, we won't.
Yeah.
Even though it's hard, but we won't. So Sean in chat, $12 is even insanity to accept. Like, what the F? Yeah. Like, people are talking about it as if like, oh, like $12 is too much. $12 will not get you anywhere in any state at this point. So, it's just amazing how people talk about people making money from chump change. Like, that's just the part that's amazing to me. Sean, again, same though. Big runs the littles, also known as they want to see who they can get more money from. Angel, our colleague in INN, leaving it up to the customers to pay your employees is an outrage. That part. Leaving it up to the customers to pay your employees is an outrageous practice.
Yeah.
Agreed. Sean in the chat, sales tax is the same thing. Also, Sean, I worked at a car wash. I live day to day off tips, then pay my bills, hopefully with my wage.
Right.
But that was because my tips were not taxed. Also, though, that was 2007, way different time. Sean in chat. So if you have less than 20 employees working internal staff, not administrative, but working staff, add a grant, add a tax incentive. Right. Angel, is way too expensive to eat at a restaurant these days. Yep. Sean, bruh, my fam of 4, $80 to $120 for eating out. Even fat. Yeah. The fact that, hold on, let me call this out for a second. McDonald's shouldn't be that fucking expensive. Like, to get a meal like at McDonald's now is like around $15 now. Like, like since when? Since when? Right. Like, I remember back in the day, you could get like a bunch of food for like under 10. Like, that was several burgers, fries, and a drink. And chicken nuggets to boot.
$5 footlong no more, bro. That's over. Long are the days.
Right. So so I think that's it from the chat. But yeah.
We'll get to our next one then. So
can you give me the code for
hold on. I can. Let me do this. That way you can see it. And then just do that. The same code.
Yeah, same code.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you got it. Perfect. All right. So we're gonna talk about Bukele a bit. Me and Indy had talked about this quite a bit, especially when the CCOT stuff is, in the news and whatnot. So we talked about that extensively on those clips. So go check that out. But I brought this from Alan MacLeod, right? And we're going to talk about a bit of Bukele's background because I don't think people really are aware. He's Palestinian, Bukele?
No.
Yeah, that's a big factor here. So this is Alan MacLeod over in MintPress. He writes, Nayib Bukele's El Salvador dictatorship is made in Israel. Funny how they tend to everything connects back, bro. I wish it didn't, but turns out. So, Nayib Bukele may be Palestinian, but the dictatorship he has built in El Salvador is very much made in Israel. From arming his security forces to supplying him with weapons and high-tech surveillance tools, MintPress explores the Israeli influence, helping to prop up the man who calls himself the world's coolest dictator. Jesus Christ. Calls himself that. Since Bukele's ascension to the presidency in 2019, Israel exports to El Salvador have been rapidly advancing, growing at an annual rate of more than 21%. This increase consists primarily of weapons. Salvadorian forces are well supplied with Israeli hardware. The military and police use the Israeli-made Galil and Arad 5 rifles, the Uzi submachine gun, numerous Israeli pistols, and ride an Ailstorm and Plasan Yagu armored vehicles. Some equipment Salvadorian forces use comes free, courtesy of the Israeli sources. In 2019, an Israeli NGO, the Jerusalem Foundation, a group that builds illegal settlements on Palestinian land, announced that it would donate $3 million worth of supplies to the Salvadorian police and military. For others, however, the Bukele administration is paying top dollar, meaning that this relationship is extremely profitable for the high-tech Israeli defense sector. In 2020, the Salvadorian police paid around $3.4 million for 1 year's use of 3 Israeli spyware products. These tools include GeoLock, a program that intercepts calls and texts from targeted phones, and WebTangles, which uses individual social media accounts to build up files on people, including using their photos for facial recognition. A third, WaveGuard Tracer, marketed in some regions as Guardian, tracks users' movements through the GPSs on their phone. Perhaps the most notorious piece of spyware used, however, is Pegasus, developed by the NSO group and outgroup of the IDF, Unit 8200. The app hit the headlines in 2022 when it revealed that repressive governments the world over had used it to surveil thousands of public figures, including kings, presidents, politicians, activists, and reporters. El Salvador was one of the most heavily penetrated nations. A report from Citizen Lab found that the Bukele admin was using it to secretly monitor dozens of police figures critical of the president, including 22 journalists from the independent outlet El Faro. Bukele has used these Israeli tools and weapons to crack down on dissent and opposition to his rule since 2022, when he declared a state of exception, suspending rights and civil liberties. He has imprisoned at least 85,000 people, a staggering figure for such a small country. Today, around 2% of the adult population, along with over 3,000 children, languish behind bars and dangerously overcrowded jails. The most well-known of these is the terrorist confinement center, Centro de Confinamiento del Terrorismo, or CCOT, which is by far and away the largest prison in world history. Built to incarcerate over 40,000 people, it is this center that the Trump admin has been sending migrants rounded up by ICE. In a meeting with Bukele in the Oval Office, President Trump stated that U.S. nationals would be sent there next. El Salvador holds vastly more people in prisons per capita than any other country, and conditions are among the worst in the world. Food is sparse, lights are kept on 24 hours a day, and cells are frequently packed with more than 100 occupants. Those incarcerated at CCOT are allowed no contact with the outside world, not even with their families or lawyers. Often, the first thing a Salvadorian family hears about their disappeared relative is news that he died while incarcerated. Man, sound familiar? Any of this sound familiar? Torture is commonplace. Osiris Luna, the director of El Salvador's prison system, has even been sanctioned by the U.S. government for his role in gross human rights abuses, which we don't do that often, do we? We don't talk about gross human rights abuses. So, I mean, this just screams of Guantanamo and Abu Ghraib and, Sid Taiman, right? All Israeli-taught torture camps. So, Bukele justified the mass imprisonment of his countrymen as a necessary step to break the power of organized gangs and drug cartels. Yet a significant portion of these held are his political opponents. Among those detained are union leaders, politicians, and human rights defenders. Facing the threat of imprisonment or other punishment, El Faro has moved its operations to neighboring Costa Rica. So, amid the chaos, Bukele has fired tens of thousands of public service workers, reduced taxes on the business community. He has also reoriented El Salvador's foreign policy from a progressive, anti-imperialist stance to aligning itself with right-wing governments around the world, including Israel. Sounds very much like Argentina recently as well.
Sounds like us. Not even sounds like us.
How you feel, you dog? Yep. Despite coming from a prominent Palestinian family that immigrated from Jerusalem in the early 20th century, throughout his political career, he has made a point of vocally supporting Israel, its culture, and its foreign policy. As far back as 2015, when he was mayor of San Salvador, the Israeli embassy had identified him as a partner for cooperation. Okay. 3 years later, in February 2018, he visited Israel on a trip organized by Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs, Tzipi Hotvetli, and American Jewish Congress President Jack Rosen. There, he participated in a security conference attended by Benjamin Netanyahu, President Reuven Rivlin, and made a public appearance at the Western Wall. So, there's photos of Bukele at the Western Wall. You can look those up if you want. In the wake of the October 7th assault, Bukele voiced his support for Israel and condemnation of Hamas. As a Salvadorian of Palestinian ancestry, I'm sure the best thing that could happen to the Palestinian people is for Hamas to completely disappear, he wrote, describing Hamas as savage beasts and comparing them to MS-13, one of El Salvador's most violent gangs. El Salvador is home to a large Palestinian population. Some 100,000 live in the small country, and yet the Central American nation is far from a stronghold of support for anti-colonial struggles. Palestinians in El Salvador have generally done very well and entered society's upper echelons. Bukele is actually the third Palestinian to become president. Historically, the Latin American business community has sided with conservative or reactionary forces, and the Palestinian diaspora has shied away from supporting resistance movements in the Middle East. Probably because they're going to get fucking thrown in jail. They don't want that shit.
Right.
So...
Or they don't want to lose... Well, unfortunately, it sounds like they don't want to lose the privilege that...
Their meal ticket.
They got. That kind of sounds like, in certain ways, like the Jewish community in terms of what's happening right now, but the Palestinians in that diaspora.
So, Bukele's culture is not so much Palestinian as it is neo-fascist. That's his culture. So he's going to identify with repressive governments around the world, says Roberto Lovato, a Salvadorian American writer and professor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, told MintPress News. The country is also home to a large and actively evangelical Christian community, for whom Israel's rise is a key issue, despite being the son of the country's most notable imam, one who claimed his son is a practicing Muslim. Bukele has positioned himself as a Christian conservative, and his evangelical supporters say he was chosen by God to rid the nation of gang violence. I believe in God and Jesus Christ. I believe in his word. I believe in his word revealed in the Holy Bible, Bukele said. Okay.
So Christian Zionist.
Allegedly, yeah. The connections between Israel and El Salvador, however, predated Bukele by decades. During the 1970s and 80s, the country was a hotspot in the Cold War, and U.S.-backed death squads battled the leftist FMLN rebels. The military regime killed around 75,000 civilians in a dirty war that scars the region to this day. The violence was so extreme and so well publicized that even the U.S. sought to distance itself from it. Into that void stepped Israel, providing 83% of El Salvador's military needs from 1975 to 1979, including napalm. In return, El Salvador moved its embassy to Jerusalem, legitimizing Israel's claim to the city. Lovato, former member of the FMLN, told MintPress that the country was turned into a laboratory for repression. During the Civil War, the U.S. government aligned a whole panoply of different practitioners of torture and murder. You had trainers from Taiwan, Israel, and other countries going to El Salvador to train the Salvadorian government to do what they had learned how to do. So, one of the most notable individuals who received Israeli training was Major Robert D. Abousan, leader of the far-right death squad. Dr. Abousan is known to have ordered the assassination of Archbishop Oscar Romero, nicknamed Blowtorch Bob, for his penchant for using the tool on his opponent's genitals. His death squad is thought to have killed some 30,000 people, many of whom were tortured to death. Thus, it is no stretch to say that El Salvador's repressive state apparatus has long been sustained by Israeli money, tech, and know-how. So you can see this little timeline here, right? You know, we're supplying the military supplies, 300 Israeli advisors, train Guatemalan forces. Israel arms trains Colombian and Nicaraguan death squads. Colombia and El Salvador import significant quantities of Israeli arms. Do you know about the Galil? Do you know about this? So,
not the name, but
yeah, the Galil is made by a name. So, have you heard of Kalashnikov? You've heard of that guy, right? Guy who made the AK-47. So, the guy who made the Galil is named Balishnikov, and he wanted to call it the Balishnikov, couldn't do that. It's literally a redesign of the AK, the Galil. Israel can't make their own shit ever. They copy everybody else's shit. So that's how that works. It's a Israeli copy of the AK, the Galil. You're welcome. The more you know. In Guatemala, Israel sold planes, armored personnel carriers, and rifles to the military, even built them a domestic ammunition factory. General Efren Rios Montt thanked Israel for its participation in a coup that brought him to power in 1982, stating that it went so smoothly because many of our soldiers were trained by Israelis. Around 300 Israeli advisors worked to train Rios Montt's forces into genocidal death squads who systematically killed over 200,000 Mayans. A sign of the deep connections between the two groups is that Rios Montt's men began referring to the indigenous Mayans as Palestinians during their attack. I wish I was making this shit up. I wish. It is a similar story in Colombia, where the country's most notorious death squads were trained by, guess who? Israeli operatives, such as General Rafael Itan. To this day, Colombian police and military make extensive use of Israeli weaponry, so normalized has the Israeli influence become in Colombian society that in 2011, sitting President Juan Manuel Santos appeared in an advertisement for Israeli mercenary firm Global CST. They were people with a lot of experience. They've been helping us to work better, he stated. Israel also armed and supported the military dictatorships of Chile and Argentina in the 1970s and 80s, even as the latter explicitly targeted over 1,000 Jews in the largest slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust. In Nicaragua, Israel supplied the Somoza dictatorship, helping it carry out a dirty war in Rwanda. It sold weapons to the Hutus as it was carrying out a genocide against the Tutsi population. We've talked about this. Israel weapons were used by Serbia during the Yugoslav Civil War of the 1990s. Shout out to my Yugo commies. And successive administrations in Tel Aviv also helped sustain the apartheid government of South Africa, sending it weapons, sharing intelligence with it. Also, ISIS, which we'll get to in our next story. So, funny how all these death squads end up being backed by Israel. I wonder how that works. But, therefore, it should come as little surprise that Bukele's administration has sought and established such close ties to the Israeli government. These weapons and techniques, honed on the Palestinians, are going global, helping a government thousands of miles away crack down on civil liberties, while Bukele, a fucking Palestinian, is very much in charge of El Salvador. It is clear that his dictatorship has a distinct Israeli flavor. So, thoughts, concerns, comments?
I mean, I think just Israel being itself,
yeah,
kind of capturing, I could say in this way, like people of color to kind of be their mouthpieces and, like corrupt them to be Zionists, essentially, and allowing them to do their dirty work. So, yeah, it's just more of the same in terms of, the propaganda that Israel wants to use. They're using people of color in order to do it, which I think is, well, we've kind of seen the play by now, but I think it just kind of reminds us again of the kind of reach that Israel has. It's not limited to the West, as we now can see. It also has that reach in the global South. Now we're seeing it more. We've known about it in Africa for a minute, but also in Latin America as well. But I think it's just sad, that this is a Palestinian who is seeing the needs of his people. And I'm just curious. I have to wonder, like, what happened in his life that he would kind of turn away from his Palestinian heritage?
Another one.
Exactly. That he's not going to. No, I didn't want to say him. I did not want to say him at all. But like you said it for me. But but he's a traitor.
Fuck you, DJ Khaled. Fuck you.
Right, not in the nicest of way, but he's a traitor. Yeah. So so I just have to wonder, how does he sleep at night knowing what's happening to his people? That he would side with the devil, or what happened to him, like in his childhood or whatever. That again, siding with Israel. That would be interesting to hear his theory of the case. But
fucking stupid, dude.
Move this man!
All right, fam. You know how it goes. Talking about these things, probably the reason why YouTube decides we can't have any money. So if you want to get around that system, you could go to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork or scan this QR code that you see on your screen and give us a few dollary dues. We do appreciate it. But if you can't give that because you're one of the poors like ourselves, like and subscribe. Hit the share button. Hit the bell. Do all the things. Leave a comment. Am I stupid? Probably, but only occasionally, let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Pew! We did that shit. All right.
Right.
Before we get to our next one, how are the chats holding up? You doing all right?
Good. I actually do want to go back. There were a few comments that were made at my last segment that I think were spicy. That I think that deserve a shout out.
First, let me go to Substack. Seventh Signal Soul says, militarization of police has had a profound effect on American law enforcement. Yep. Funded by DC weapons manufacturers. Yep. Agreed. Israel equals DC weapons, war, and money laundry. So, yeah, I'm with you, dog. So, El Salvador's been at this for a long few years. Corporate, totalitarian, fascist, Trump bro. So, yep. Agreed. All right, what do you got over on the YouTubes?
I want to backtrack a bit. So, Wellesley Donaldson in the chat said, this was regard to my last segment, pay workers living wages, period. Tips are gifts, mostly out of pity for the waiter being paid so poorly. It's terrible that it's being normalized. That. He continues, I will never feel obligated to give a gift. I catch a lot of hell for being cheap. Let's see. Leslie again. If the business could pay zero and force their waiters to live solely on tips, they'll do it. It is pity, whether or not you acknowledge it. And I think he ends here. It's not that I never tip either. I just resent the feeling of obligation. I think that's key in terms of tipping because, you know, like I'll give an example. Like you know me, there's a bar that I go to usually once a week because one of my close friends goes and I hang out with him once a week because he lives in the booties of Virginia. I'm not going down to Virginia to see him. So, you know, so he comes up to DC like once a week and we hang out. Like by now, because I have gone like at least once a week for now, like over a year now. Like I know a lot of the bar staff now. So it's not to say I consider them friends, but I know them well enough. Like, and I will tip them, you know, but I don't consider it, for me in my mind, because I know them, like, I don't consider it like, you know, I'm tipping them out of pity. I'm giving them money because it's like, hey, you know, thank you for being you. Thank you for helping me, serving me. You know, here's just a couple of dollars, just, you know, just to make things, you know, yeah, I kind of consider it a gift in that context, you know, because it's based around an establishment that I visit frequently, and I've gone to formed some type of relationship with the wait staff and the bar staff at this bar. So, but I think the problem is because, you know, as Leslie was saying, we tip now in terms of, well, it's either one or two things. We tip out of pity, or we tip out of compulsion, and then out of compulsion, then we're just like, okay, here's like $2 when you might have had like $100, you know, bill or something. You know, like you almost kind of feel like forced to. Whereas, as Angel said earlier, like if you actually tip them well, like if you paid people living wage and people know that, then if they tip, it's more genuine.
Yeah.
It's not like you're tipping to essentially support the workers to compensate for how the owners may stiff them.
And literally the rest of the world seems to already have this figured the fuck out. So we're late to the party, as usual.
Right. Right. So, but you guys are giving me life with that segment and with your comments. So thank you so much for that. Angel said, in the chat.
A Palestinian that supports Israel.
Right.
Yeah.
Angel continued. Look, when Israel supports a country like this, then by definition, that means that American taxpayer dollars is supporting this. Yep.
Guaranteed.
Well, Leslie, he heard the USA had the highest per capita prison population, and he said, hold my
cerveza. Yeah. He also said the Israelis are eager to sell. So,
Angel, most Palestinians in El Salvador are part of the elite wealthy. So class. Well, I didn't say it, but it's very much a class issue.
Yeah.
At this point, Wellesley again. Which Holy Bible? There are an awful lot of them. So many interpretations of a dead language.
Yep.
Angel. Yeah, which is why most Palestinians in El Salvador don't stand up for their brethren in Gaza. Yep, because of class. And I think that is it.
Kill Your Egregore says it's a kosher AK-47. Exactly. You know? Exactly. Fucking Blahishnikov. So dumb. Anyway, you ready for the next one?
Right. So last week, hold on, let me see. Yeah, okay. All right. So last week, you reported on how essentially the humanitarian aid, quote unquote, in Gaza is being privatized in so many words. So to add to the fuck shit, this is once again due to the reporting of Robert Inglekash over at MintPress News. He's reporting that Israel-backed militias who are linked to ISIS are looting Gaza aid under the watch of the IOF. So that's why he titled this article. So we'll get into it in terms of what is going on. So Robert reports, Israeli officials often claim that Hamas has been looting aid heading to Gaza, yet the evidence suggests the opposite. New reports and eyewitness accounts indicate that Israel is backing ISIS-linked militians who are working to replace Hamas security forces and are looting humanitarian aid under the watchful eye of IDF drones. New evidence recently emerged of ISIS-linked militias in Gaza operating inside the Israeli-controlled buffer zone and controlling roads on which aid was destined to be transported. These armed men were photographed brandishing automatic weapons, wearing Israeli military tactical vests, and bearing Palestinian flag patches on their helmets.
ISIS agents use Krav Maga. We've got an ex-Mossad guy. He comes in on Thursdays.
To the naked eye, they could be mistaken for Palestinian security force officers. In fact, they are members of an infamous criminal network responsible for looting humanitarian aid. On May 21st, 15 World Food Program trucks carrying flour were looted, and UN sources suggest the perpetrators to these armed factions. Yet they claim to be a legitimate opposition group poised to replace Hamas. For some 80 days, Israel had imposed a total blockade of all food, medical supplies, water, and fuel entering the territory. As soon as a small number of trucks were allowed to enter, the militants were spotted, sporting new military gear and forced to intercept their humanitarian supplies. You added this.
Yeah.
So was this wasn't from MintPress, right?
Sheer Post.
Okay.
Is Jonathan K. Cook,
right.
who writes that Israel's claim that Hamas is stealing aid is so preposterous, no serious journalist or politician ought to give it any kind of airing. Yet, there is a continuous cropping up in the coverage of Gaza. How do I know Israel's claim is utterly worthless? For this simple reason. Israel has a fleet of surveillance drones constantly hovering over the tiny strip of land that is Gaza, monitoring every inch of the territory. The incessant whine you hear every time you watch someone there being interviewed as one of those drones. There are Israel's eyes on the enclave. If you are outside in Gaza, you might as well be living in the Truman Show. Where Hamas stealing aid in Gaza, Israel would easily be able to document it. It would have the video footage from its drones. The fact that it has not provided any footage showing Hamas theft of aid, its ransacking of aid trucks, or its fighters smuggling themselves into aid warehouses is confirmation enough that Israel has simply invented this claim to rationalize its plans to starve the people of Gaza to death through months of an aid blockade or force them to flee into neighboring Sinai, whichever comes first. Without its disinformation campaign about Hamas stealing aid, Israel knows popular revulsion and its starving campaign would grow quickly, and Western governments would further struggle to keep opposition in check. There are lots of other reasons, of course, to reject Israel's lies about Hamas stealing aid, not least because every single charity and aid agency dealing with Gaza says that aid is not being stolen by Hamas, but also because, were Hamas fighters doing so, they would be stealing from their own families, from their children and grandparents, who are much more vulnerable to Israel's starvation campaign than they are. The idea that Hamas is stealing aid makes sense only to a racist European colonial mindset in which Hamas fighters are viewed as boogeymen, figures indifferent to the deaths of their own children, wives, and parents. What undoubtedly has happened...
Actually, that's a very interesting
point.
Right, but it's interesting that Jonathan made this point, is that, which to kind of give a parallel or to Bukele,
yeah,
that you reported on in the last segment, you know, like, because it's the, like, a lot of Israelis make the association, whether subtly or not, that Hamas equals Palestinians. Well, if you're going to say that, then essentially you're making the case that Hamas is essentially stealing from its own people, which I think kind of works, as he's saying, it kind of works with that kind of mindset. I think it's easier for people to believe in that given our own racist attitudes in the West. So I will also kind of argue, I'm not sure of the word, but it's, but it's the idea that Hamas would essentially steal from their own people. So, that humanizing, so basically making them seem like animals, when in retrospect, Israelis essentially have done that to their own people willingly in the guise of protecting them from so-called hostages. I don't want to say so-called because we know that hostage is still there, but Israelis don't give a shit about their own hostages. They're willing to kill them in order to keep essentially the propaganda going. So it's almost kind of like calling the kettle black in this regard. That, like the argument that Israelis make is that, oh, Hamas is terrible. They're stealing from, Palestinians. So that's why they need to be destroyed. Well, you're not making that case for the IDF by order of the Israeli government, who essentially are willing to kill their own, and that has been reported on, but those stories kind of get brushed aside.
Yeah.
In the guise of, oh, well, like, yeah, they don't want to admit that openly, or at least kind of keep that, under the hood, so to speak. So,
well, and here's the kicker.
It's interesting that you made that connection, that it can be used. It works here due to the, I guess, essentially our racist, like, undertones that we experience here.
It's the classic Carlin, Israeli, like, soldiers are, freedom fighters, whereas the brown ones, like, are terrorists, right? So, what undoubtedly is happening is that Israel is allowing the strongest extended families in Gaza, often crime families with significant private arsenals, to loot the aid. That has become a serious problem since Israel killed off Gaza's civilian police force in violation of international law, leaving no one to enforce public order. When everyone's starving, the most powerful families mobilize their strength to grab an unfair share of the aid. That was an entirely predictable outcome of Israel's policy to smash all of Gaza's institutions, including its hospitals, government offices, and police stations, on the bogus pretext that they were Hamas. Same thing with, like, the money lenders as well. Because we talked about that before, where, like, physical money is deteriorating in Gaza, and there's entire scams of, like, how money gets in. Israel's fine with that crime. They're okay with that. So, but anyway, Note, too, that Israel has long cultivated close ties to Palestinian crime families because they provide a potential alternative and more co-optable power base to the Palestinian national movements and are a good source of collaborators. So, just in case you were wondering. Yep. So, and ISIS. But anyway, you brought this?
Yeah. So this is from Mohammed at itsmo9. This was a long thread. I didn't want to put it all here, but I think you get enough information from this just from these two tweets. He tweeted, the IOF allows sunflower trucks and assigns Yashur Abu Shabab to secure them up to the crossing area. Yashir Abu Shabab, who stole thousands of trucks before the truce and is now directly cooperating with the IOF. Yasser and the IOF are two sides of the same coin. So, so essentially, Shabab is Palestinian.
Yeah.
You know, siding with Israel to screw over his own people. So, wait, did I skip? No,
I don't think so.
I thought it was two, but anyway, that's
Yep.
fine. You get the point. The leader of the Israeli-aligned militia is a man named Yasser Abu Shabab, a member of the Taraban tribe that extends between the Negev, Gaza, and Sinai. However, he and others affiliated with the Taraban have long been denounced as not representing the tribe to their extensive criminal past. Abdul Shabab was well known in Gaza for his fierce opposition to Hamas and had been arrested for smuggling narcotics. He also maintained a direct connection to ISIS in the Egyptian Sinai. When Israeli bombing destroyed the jails run by Hamas security forces during the early days of the Gaza war, the infamous criminal managed to escape. From there, Abdul Shabab quickly began building a militant force numbering of at least 100 men, many of whom were also previously imprisoned and had known ties to ISIS and al-Qaeda-linked groups. An internal UN memo reported by the Financial Times in November 2024 said that Abdul Shabab's men were operating inside Israel's buffer zone, looting aid shipments with the passive, if not active, benevolence of Israeli forces. This is notable as Israeli forces have routinely shot and killed civilians attempting to enter that same zone, even when coordinated in advance. While these criminal factions began looting early into the Gaza war, they became more prominent following Israel's invasion of Rafah on May 6th of last year. Up until that point, Hamas-led Palestinian police had helped coordinate aid deliveries through the Rafah crossing. The security was provided despite Israel threatening to bomb the police officers if they approached aid trucks, often forcing Gaza's law enforcement into a hands-off role. But once Rafah was invaded and police disappeared, Israeli forces worked in proximity with criminal networks to intercept and sell stolen aid into intermediaries. They're the
Yeah, it's you.
Do you have the music playing?
No.
Oh, it's me.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. The result was a massive price hike for basic goods, with these gangs reportedly drip feeding supplies to local sellers, maintaining artificial scarcity during a famine. Israel's leading human rights organization, B'Tselem, has labeled the policy manufactured famine. Two sources working with aid agencies in Gaza confirmed to MintPress News that all aid entering the strip is either subject to a bribe paid to these gangs or is partially or completely confiscated. Both spoke on condition of anonymity, stating that the gangs are widely believed to be coordinating with Israeli forces. Prior to January 19th, when a temporary ceasefire began, these gangs wore face coverings and operated as a ragtag militia. In recent weeks, however, they have rebranded themselves as the Anti-Terror Service, claiming to be a grassroots opposition to Hamas. On Abdul Shabab's Facebook page, he now describes himself as a grassroots leader who stood up against corruption and looting, posting photos of himself patrolling roads and claiming to work with international aid organizations to ensure the delivery of flower trucks. Back in November 2024, he told the Washington Post that Hamas has left us with nothing, even denying that his men carried weapons. He claimed that the looting was done by unarmed individuals and they avoided stealing food intended for children. Yet aid workers and truck drivers insist his men are committing armed robbery. So I guess you also I
think you added
brought
this.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. So at Mohammed Shahad 2 tweeted, Israel is aiding ISIS-linked terrorists and criminals to sow chaos and famine in Gaza. Shadi al-Sofi, a wanted murderer and son of an informant, collaborated with Israel, and al-Abdul Shabab, a drug dealer, are the main warlords responsible for looting most aid under IDF protection. They formed gangs of over 200 armed criminals and established a military-like compound, per the UN, in an empty death zone. Scroll down, please.
Yep.
Fully under IDF control, where they looted only this Saturday night about 100 aid trucks at once. This way, Israel can absolve itself of responsibility for its deliberate starvation policy in Gaza and say, look, we're letting aid in. It's Hamas's fault that food doesn't reach people, as claimed by Senator John Fetterman yesterday. IDF soldiers never fire those gang members as they loot aid right in front of Israeli tanks and troops in a closed military zone that no Gazian is allowed into. The IDF only fires at local policemen whenever they try to prevent the looting. Yasser Abdul Shabab was arrested by Gaza's local police multiple times in the past for drug smuggling and trading, which is often facilitated by ISIS groups in Sinai. Hamas militants attempted to eliminate him yesterday in an attack that killed 11 of his gang, including his brother and partner Fatih and the gang's accountant. 30 others were wounded. Shadi al-Sofi murdered in 2020 Jabir al-Irik, I guess. Sorry, pronunciation. I guess. A quick maybe. A PLFP member whom Israel had sentenced to life and imprisoned for 15 years for killing al-Sofi's father during the first Intifada for spying on Palestinians for Israel. Al-Sofi was convicted in a Gazian court, and the local police captured him in a special operation in late 2020 before he broke out of prison with the help of ISIS-linked militants and was smuggled out of Gaza to Sinai, then reported to Israel's Negev. He returned to Gaza with the IDF ground invasion, where he now co-leads the criminal gangs that loot aid and sabotage humanitarian work under IDF protection. So back to the article. Another warlord reportedly backed by Israel is Shadi al-Sufi, a convicted murderer and drug trafficker who had been sentenced to death. In 2020, he assassinated Ajir al-Kik, I guess?
Yep.
A senior commander in the PFLP's Adu Ali Mustafa brigades. He reportedly laid work with ISIS contacts to accept to Sinai. A senior official with major humanitarian organization told MintPress News, in the areas where the security forces are operating, the situation is always more stable, and they have repeatedly cracked down on black market operations. Anyone telling you the gangs are helpful in the past, helping the people is a liar. That is all I can say. In November, Haaretz reported the IDF is aware of the problem. They say at one point, the government has even considered making the clans to which the armed men belong responsible for distributing aid to Gaza residents, even though some of the clans members are involved in terrorism and some are affiliated with extreme organizations like the Islamic State. This now appears to be the Israeli strategy to deputize these criminal gangs as a replacement security force to supplant Hamas rule. The makeover also coincides with efforts by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a U.S.-linked initiative rumored to involve private military contractors, raising concerns that such groups may be tapped to cooperate with these armed networks. A source affiliated with the Palestinian security forces in Gaza told MintPress News that a similar strategy was attempted in northern Gaza, but that Hamas, working with politically unaffiliated locals, dismantled the criminal networks that began forming under Israeli supervision. Meanwhile, the UN and every major humanitarian organization that has addressed the issue have pointed the finger at the gangs, not Hamas, for looting. None have reported credible instances of Hamas stealing aid. In fact, the Biden administration even asked Israel in February 2024 to halt its targeting of Hamas-led security forces, which had been helping coordinate delivery of humanitarian trucks into Gaza. Hamas is ISIS, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared, but recent actions by Israel suggest the opposite, that is, actively empowering Salafist factions to undermine Hamas in Gaza. In March, the Israeli military floated the idea of arming certain tribal clans to establish so-called Hamas-free zones. Among those considered was the Dugmush clan, known for its links to ISIS. Since Hamas was voted into power and took control of Gaza in 2007, it has fought a years-long war against Salafi jihadist factions inside the Strip. In 2009, it crushed an al-Qaeda-aligned uprising that left 22 dead. Sporadic bombings and assassinations attempts followed. Tensions between Hamas and al-Qaeda affiliates continued intermittently for years, marked by sporadic violence and periodic mass arrests, most notably in 2015, when Hamas detained over 50 Salafist militants after a wave of bombings targeting civilians in Gaza.
How about this?
So
it mentioned the Salafist movement a bit ago, right? So I just wanted to kind of clarify what that was, right? The Salafi movement, or Salafism, is a fundamentalist revival movement within Sunni Islam, originating in the late 19th century and influential in the Islamic world to this day. I mean, see also Wahhabism and all those fundamental Islamic stuff, you know? Like, we hear that thrown around in the region a lot, the Salafist sort of thing. So, useful to know what that is. That is, of course, Wikipedia's definition, by the way. So, take that with, you know, grains of salt and whatnot. But
that same year, ISIS formally entered the fray. The Sheikh Omar Hadid Brigade, an ISIS affiliate, announced its presence in Gaza shortly after ISIS executed Hamas commander Sheikh Abdul Salah Taha in Syria's Yarmouk camp. Hamas responded swiftly. Its security forces hunted down and killed the group's leader, Yonis Hunar, in a gunfight. In 2018, ISIS would officially declare war on Hamas, urging its followers to carry out attacks in order to overthrow the group in Gaza. Now, in a bitter twist, Israel is backing many of these elements. Under the guise of aid security, it is arming and enabling former ISIS and al-Qaeda-linked operatives, along with known traffickers and warlords, to carve out zones of control in Gaza. These forces are marketed as a grassroots alternative to Hamas. In practice, they are looting aid and destabilizing local governments under the unwatchful eye of Israeli drones. So, a mess, and honestly kind of complicated, but essentially, Israel is recruiting ISIS to do their dirty work.
Yeah.
In addition to themselves.
Terrorism, terrorist, terror organization, terrorist attacks, terrorism, terrorist network, terrorist attacks, terrorist group, terrorists, terrorists, instruments of terror, network,
instruments,
terror cells, terrorists, terrorizing terror and murder. Thank you all.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I got it, I think. Terror. Got it.
Right.
Yep. Cool. Well, yeah, Israel's been, I mean, ISIS equals Israel Secret Intelligence Service, as we all know. So,
right.
But, yep. How it goes. How the cookie crumbles, as they say.
And yeah, and that's why we're demonetized. So, but again, shout out to Robert. I mean, look, Robert, we love you here. It's obvious by now. Like, we would love to talk to you and hear more about you. Yes, we definitely want to talk to you. Like, we actually mentioned this last night. We could probably do a playlist of Robert alone, just given the number of stories that we have covered by him, you know, because one thing we definitely appreciate about him, he's extremely thorough. So Robert, you're welcome to come on if you ever want to chat to us, and you know, if you want to give us the ins of your investigative reporting through MintPress. But regardless, for the rest of y'all, if you'd like to donate to help us feature journalists like Robert on a regular basis, you can scan the QR code that you see on your screen, or type in the Ko-fi link that you see at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're in the YouTube chat, you can type in !donate, all one word, and the Ko-fi link will pop up. And if you want to donate, you can donate right there. You can also donate via Cash App, PayPal, and Substack, especially if you want to give monthly. And then if you give on Substack, you can see Indy will send you everything in independent media pretty much every day, including our stuff. So it might be worth doing that, especially if you're interested in supporting us monthly. But as we keep saying, we know times are tough. So the free way to support us is liking and subscribing to our content. And please share our content to help fight the suppression that we see on YouTube. And make sure you leave a comment. Does this surprise you that Israel is essentially hiring ISIS to essentially do their dirty work in Gaza by essentially recruiting criminals to loot aid that is meant to go to Palestinians? So let us know in the chat what you think, and thank you for watching.
Yeah. Cool. Before we get to our last one, let's do this. Cool. To the chats.
Benjamin Netanyahu?
No, not him. Over on Substack, speaking of, Seventh Sign Soul says Palestinian Authority equals Israel whores. We have covered their eating of their own. So if you want to look that up on the channel, you're welcome to. He also mentions Robert in Lakesh is an excellent boots-on-the-ground reporter with a large catalog of journalism work across multiple platform channels. He did the sexual abuse investigations run by Al Jazeera and others. Also, in Lakesh produced a documentary, Steal of the Century. So I don't think I've watched that, so probably should go check that out. But what do you got on the YouTube?
Could be worth trying. Could be worth reaching out to him if we do watch it to have him talk about it.
Sure.
So maybe.
Yeah.
But to be fair to him, it doesn't seem like he goes on do interviews at all. So, you know, he may not. But we'll see. We'll try.
So this explains how this army of extermination can lie and say that Hamas keeps stealing aid, says Chris H.
Yes.
So Wesley Donison says theft seems trivial when you're mass murdering. Yeah, except they use it as an excuse for the mass murder. So cyclical fucking issues. Sisyphean even. Global says, of my 3 therapists, 2 of them agree this is not normal. Am I crazy yet? No, just your 3rd therapist who thinks this is normal, you know? What are they doing? So, sure, Salafi has great CIA backing. Face with rolling eyes, says KYE. So Wesley Donison says all of this sure makes ISIS seem like a fabrication of Israel. Funny how that works.
Right. Not saying anything because YouTube, but
yeah.
I'm sure you guys can put some things together.
Yeah. Exactly.
So,
anyway, all right. Let's get to our last one. And finish this show out. So they're killing us softly, Collin. Micro softly. Just to be specific. Everyone's favorite fucking like operating system, Windows Vista, Windows XP, you know, so one of those. But oh no, Windows here. Anyway, another InLakesh article. He writes, Microsoft role in Gaza goes way beyond the ICC email lockout. And look at this guy, Care Bear. You see this guy? You see what he's wearing? Look at that. Right? So this is from the AP. An Israeli officer wears Microsoft HoloLens headset during military testing. Care Bear, do you know what the HoloLens is?
Well, it looks like the Microsoft's equivalent of, like, was it like the Apple glasses or whatever those are called?
Sure. So, here's their demo, which I've removed their music.
Like
I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. Yeah, and then we're gonna do this, just for precaution's sake, even though all of this falls under fair use. Yeah.
This is work.
So, like,
we're giving eyes and ears to AI, so the world becomes your prompt and your interface. This is work. Working. These are thoughts happening.
Hey, Pilot.
Plans populating.
Co-pilot, when was this last replaced?
Information gathering. Instructions guiding. Schematics aligning. People connecting. Problem solving.
Co-pilot?
Hey, co-pilot. Co-pilot.
This is confidence growing. Eyes widening. These are questions.
I just finished. Co-pilot, what's next?
Rotate the engine block 90 degrees.
Questions the way you ask them.
Please get me the detailed view of the optical cable layout.
Never too many questions.
All right. Let's highlight the relay switches.
Go ahead. Keep asking.
It's in position. What's next?
Keep learning.
The hydraulic filter was changed 6 months ago.
Okay, can you pull up a service record?
Co-pilot, what's the tolerance of this locking ring?
Here is a copy of the last service record. The tolerance is 9,000ths of an inch.
Remind me where this fits into the assembly.
Step 4, align the spindle. The locking ring is highlighted.
This is work getting smarter. This is work working better. This is work working.
Working, Care Bear.
This is work making sense of the world around you.
Is it?
Co-pilot, let Ruth know that I'm finished and close out the work order.
This is AI for the front line.
For the front line, Care Bear. AI for the front line. Yay! Nothing like some AR glasses for soldiers. You know, show me the nearest Palestinian to shoot, co-pilot. I'm sure will be uttered. So, did you see this right here, Care Bear? So, British ICC chief prosecutor lost access to email and has bank accounts frozen after Trump sanctions on top court. So, I don't know if you saw this, but InLakesh is gonna mention it. So, last week, headlines lit up with a staggering development. Microsoft locked the world's top war crimes prosecutor out of his email. Karim Khan, chief of the ICC, had dared to go after Israeli officials for war crimes and was instantly digitally silenced. His accounts were frozen, his name smeared, his power stripped. It looked like petty revenge, but it wasn't just that. It was the latest move in a coordinated campaign backed by Washington, Tel Aviv, and Silicon Valley to destroy the one court willing to challenge Israeli impunity. Microsoft is at the center of it. While the press... yes.
Go ahead.
Feel free. I was going to let you finish, dog. You know?
Well, I mean, all I was going to say, Glenn Greenwald, anyone? I mean, we didn't report on that because everyone else in the mother did, but like...
Yeah.
You know...
Among
yes,
many.
obviously, among many. So,
yeah.
You know, yes, I understand the significance of Glenn Greenwald, but this guy should have also gotten as much attention as
or more,
which he didn't. So,
like,
or more. So
while the press obsessed over the email lockout, few paid attention to what came before. It's U.S.-Israeli information war against the ICC. After the court announced arrest warrants against both Hamas and Israeli officials for war crimes in Gaza, U.S. officials went into overdrive. Biden called the decision outrageous. Lawmakers threatened sanctions. Netanyahu smeared the court as anti-Semitic. Despite the outrage...
Wait, what?
Yes?
When did this happen? When did this happen?
Last week. This email thing. You know, this is over the ICC stuff, so that's been happening since Biden.
But and again, this is speculative.
Yeah.
So let me preface by saying that. But I just wonder, assuming this happened around the same time as the Glenn Greenwald fiasco, I just have to wonder if this was kind of,
the
in
reason?
a sense, maybe it could have been a coincidence, but it seems kind of intentional.
So,
like, in a way of,
covering up
give
and
Glenn
distracting.
Greenwald the attention to distract from this, which if the mainstream media actually did their job, really should be the bigger story.
Sure.
Now, granted, with Glenn Greenwald, I only saw that mostly online pretty much, but this should have been mainstream news. But of course, mainstream media is in the pocket of Israel, so they're not going to report on this anyway.
No, they're not. How dare you?
But I can't help but feel like Glenn Greenwald was a pleasant distraction, so people wouldn't talk about this at all.
So, despite the outrage, the warrants reflected a 3-to-2 ratio. Yahya Sinwar, Ismail Haniyeh, and Mohammed Al-Deif of Hamas, Israel Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Despite all three Palestinian leaders have since been killed. The Israeli officials remain untouched. Then came the kicker. The U.S. government sanctioned Khan himself. His bank accounts were frozen, and his allies were warned, help him and face criminal charges. It wasn't the first time either. In 2002, Congress passed the American Service Members Protection Act, better known as the Hague Invasion Act. It authorizes the president to send troops into the Netherlands if any American or allied official is detained by the court. But while the U.S. handled the threats and the muscle, Microsoft played a more subtle role. According to Khan, the company blocked him from his official ICC email account just as he was formalizing charges against top Israeli leaders. The timing, to many, wasn't a coincidence, it was a message. Following October 7th, Microsoft signed $10 million in new contracts with the Israeli military through a secretive program called Project Azure. The company provided infrastructure for Israeli intelligence and Air Force units, including Unit 8200 and Unit 81. These are the same units compiling kill lists in Gaza. The company stayed quiet until recently when it admitted to providing emergency support to Israel, but insisted that there was no evidence it tech harmed civilians. We investigated ourselves and found we did nothing. Here's Middle East Eye saying inside the campaign to end Microsoft's collaboration with the Israeli army. Do you remember this lady, Care Bear? Do you remember this lady right here? So you're going to. You're going to remember. Hold on. Once I play the beautiful bean footage.
Other than, wait, you played it for me yesterday, or you played it last night when we were
Well, last week, Microsoft celebrated their 50th anniversary. But what was meant to be a flashy and jovial moment for the tech giant instead became a spotlight on its complicity in Israel's war on Gaza. That's because two courageous junior engineers stood up and disrupted the high-profile events, one involving the company's founder, Bill Gates. You may have seen the viral footage of Ibtihal Abu Said disrupting a speech by Microsoft's AI CEO, Mustafa Suleyman. The young Moroccan engineer was part of the company's leading AI audio transcription team, but discovered her work was being used to help the Israeli military record and translate Palestinian voices on the ground in Gaza before they're being targeted by Israeli airstrikes. When she found out, she felt she had no choice but to speak up. Have a listen.
The question I wanted to address today is really simple. What does all this mean?
Mustafa, shame on you. You say you claim that you care about using AI for good, but Microsoft sells AI weapons to the Israeli military. 50,000 people have died, and Microsoft powers this genocide in our region.
Thank you for your process, I hear you.
You're serious, I know about this, Mustafa. You are
I hear your process, thank you.
Shame on you. You are a war profiteer. Stop using AI for genocide, Mustafa. Stop using AI for genocide in our region. You have blood on your hands. All of Microsoft has blood on its hands. How do you all celebrate when Microsoft is killing children? Shame on you all.
Thank you. I hear your protest, thank you.
I hear you. I hear you. Fucking god damn it. That guy, dude.
I acknowledge your dissent. I'm not gonna do shit about it.
Right. Yeah, like I mean it's pretty much like anyway, how many times are we gonna hear I hear you now? You know?
Right.
So anyway, we're actually gonna hear her, right? We're gonna talk to her directly. Well, Middle East Eye is. Luckily, you know, we have the power of technology.
You'll notice
so
in that video that Abu said a Moroccan refers to Mustafa Sulaiman by his ethnicity as Syrian in connection to what is happening in Gaza. Now, Abu Said was fired on Monday by Microsoft over what the company called, quote, just cause willful misconduct, disobedience, or willful neglect of duty. We spoke to her yesterday and she told Middle East Eye that many of the staff working at Microsoft are kept in the dark about how their work is being used to help Israel's military.
It has this reputation of being a company that like empowers people and empowers organizations. So, and like a military arms manufacturer, for example, where you know what you're signing up for and you've made that decision based on your like values. For Microsoft, like we just felt as employees that we were tricked, right? Like we did not sign up to work on code that directly powers war crimes. So like speaking to my personal example, I worked in the AI org and I worked on like speech to text essentially. And what I was describing about these tools being used for surveillance and targeting is definitely not something I sign up for. Like when I was trying to join the organization, all the marketing was around like, oh, we have these accessibility products where like people who have hearing issues can like see transcriptions. Like it's all marketed as like a force for good and like tech that benefits the world. And so that's what makes it even more important to speak up, because this was not something that any of the employees really just join Microsoft for.
Thoughts?
I mean, she's no lies detected.
yeah. No lies detected. So, here's from the Independent, right? Microsoft admits it provided AI to Israeli military for war in Gaza. So, they admit it. That's what they're doing. Lady's got a point, you know, so, but that's not all. Microsoft previously poured $78 million into the Israeli surveillance firm Anyvision, whose facial recognition tech was deployed across the West Bank. It also powered an app developed by the Israeli military, Al-Munesik, which spies on Palestinian permit holders. Its cloud systems process their private phone data. Worse still, Microsoft has been stacking its upper ranks with veterans of Israel's Unit 8200, effectively embedding a foreign intelligence agency into the core of one of America's most powerful corporations and building its next data centers in Israel. While the ICC is being sabotaged from the top, resistance is brewing from within. On April 4th, 2 Microsoft employees, one a whistleblower, disrupted the company's 50th anniversary celebration, accusing it of complicity in genocide. Both were fired. Then, at the Build 2025 conference, Palestinian engineer Joe Lopez interrupted CEO Satya Nadella mid-speech, saying, "My people are suffering." Security dragged him out. A day later, another protest shouted down a separate keynote, "No Azure for Apartheid." Protesters outside waved Palestinian flags and demanded answers. I bet they didn't get shit. These demonstrations were organized by the group No Azure for Apartheid, which has been documenting how Microsoft's tools are helping Israel wage war. Inside the company, those who speak out face retaliation. Meanwhile, Netanyahu is gloating the prosecutor should be worried about his status. He said after the warrants were announced, that threat has aged well. Many critics of Microsoft's outsized role in Israel's war argue that when a foreign state and its allies in Silicon Valley can paralyze an international court with the click of a button, it's not just Gaza under siege, it's in our institutions, our tech, and our sovereignty. So that's it. That's what I have to say. Microsoft sucks. Shut it down. Just shut it all down. You know, fucking close the door, turn it off. You know what I mean? Shut it down.
I was wondering if you were going to insert that sound clip.
Yeah,
you did.
Working on it. I got there. Any closing thoughts? No.
I mean, well, I think you wanted to report on this because this is kind of in your wheelhouse in terms of like AI and like the doom and gloom of
Murder
it,
robots.
and like
Don't worry about it.
It's going to
It's fine.
exactly. Like
It's fine.
yeah. So, but you know what this kind of reminds me of? This kind of shows me my not nerdom, but like kind of some of my geeky moments. So you know, you haven't seen Evangelion in full, correct?
No, I've not.
No.
Only bits and pieces.
So those of you who know, so those of you who do watch anime and argue good anime, in Neon Genesis Evangelion, the whole like Tokyo Free, that basically the military city that they built to defend themselves from the angels was basically run by supercomputers known as the Magi. So essentially those computers basically run the show. So that this kind of is what this is reminding me of, like in terms of having computers essentially making the decisions, especially big decisions for the human race. So it's kind of scary to think about like that anime that came out in 1995. We're basically nearing that point now in terms of AI being able to make decisions for us like 30 years later. Essentially, we're there now. So it's kind of scary to think about, one, how fast technology has become, that we're able to get to this point coming from a sci-fi anime, but then like how scary it is that, you know, given, you know, all these connections with AI and drones and the military, you know, like, you know, like they can find you and off you, you know, just with a simple command.
Have you seen the it's on Apple TV, the Murderbot show?
No.
Yeah, it stars Alexander Skarsgård. You know, a rogue security robot secretly gains free will. So, I mean, they're definitely trying to like let you know before the terror gets here, you know, hey, this might be some things to worry about. So, yeah, not great. Not great. Not good. Not great. So, but yeah, talking about these things is most likely why tech companies such as YouTube demonetize us for talking about such things, you know. But if you want to give money to us anyway and say fuck YouTube and Microsoft, you could do it at ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork or by scanning the QR code on your screen. And if YouTube lets us keep it down in the doobly-doo below. But if you can't give monetarily, just do all the algorithm stuff. It's apparently the only thing that gets us to new people. So like and subscribe, share the video to your friends. We literally get support one viewer at a time. And, you know, leave a comment. Let us know what, you know, are you using Microsoft machines? Are you worried about this? You should be. But let us know. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Cool.
Thank you.
We did it.
Yay.
Did Indy send you schedules by chance, per chance? You might not have got to it today, but you know.
No, but we still have it from last week that goes into the end of this week. So you can use that as a basis.
Yeah. So Seven
Because I
Sign
think
Soul
even their changes tomorrow.
over on the Substack said sue Microsoft for genocide war crimes. So I'm with you. Their lawyers have just got to be. I mean, they just got to pay them in gold at this point, you know. So
right.
But anyway, I'm scrolling to find that other schedule from last week. What do we got on the YouTube? What are people staying on there? What do you got?
Let's see. Leslie in YouTube, my Windows 95 like at your nearby international airport traffic control. Max Sarjay, the Palantir apps, Who's Your Daddy? Scroogle said this is people training AI to take their jobs or our jobs. Scroogle also said, hey, that happened to me but only on the state level. Government froze and seized my back accounts, then drained them. Sucks balls. Leslie again, just make sure your VR jumpsuit has received thorough maintenance after the previous user is finished. Let's see.
Have you watched The Expanse? Have you watched that yet?
No.
Oh my God.
No.
Go check that out. Very, very good. Very dystopian sci-fi. Although it's has some hope.
School.
You know.
School on YouTube chat, we have entered the era of the technocratic feudal state.
Yep.
Leslie again, I need to switch to Linux anyway, now that has new incentive.
Yep. There's some good ones out there, especially if you're like looking for stuff for machines that are old. There's plenty of good Linux derivatives that are like low power that work really well, apparently. You know, you got that old laptop in a drawer, might as well switch it over.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Chris H. Evangelion is Collin's anime, damn right. You better recognize. It's just so good. And I think that's it.
I sent you the Evangelion King of the Hill intro the other day. I don't know if you watched that, but very good.
I did see, well, I didn't watch it, but I did see that you sent it.
Rip John Redcorn. What a fucking terrible story that is. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we should report on that maybe as an extra, and it's Pride Month, so
I think people covered it.
Maybe next time.
If they didn't, shame
maybe,
on them.
But right. But anyway,
what's coming up this week?
Well,
time subject to change.
Are the same.
Yeah.
But what we do know, if you happen to be here, you can fill us in. So Monday, well, you guys know the drill. The schedule really doesn't change. But Monday through Thursday, AM Wake Up simulcast. You can only find that on X, Kick, or Twitch. Indy often pops in, even maybe be on the show. So definitely check that out. All these times are Eastern time. Eastern, by the way. I don't think there's American tradition tomorrow night, I believe, what I overheard last night. So no American Tradition tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Friday, 10 a.m. Independent Review. Also simulcast on X, Kick, and Twitch. Angel in the Afternoon will be at 7. There will probably be an American Tradition clip show. Keep in mind that they will not be a live episode tomorrow night. So yeah, there's that. Saturday, Pro Wrestling Talk with Richie Perfect and Angel over on the Ocho. 10. No, I guess that'll be old. Sunday, How Do We Miss That? With you and Indy at 10, followed by Boats at 1 a.m.
Should be 12.
Or you're just going that?
It'll just be after.
Okay.
After How Do We Miss That? So
come in at midnight and see if, assuming that Indy is now going overtime.
We'll be around.
And then you want to go back in, and then we'll be back next Wednesday at 9.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
But any changes, follow us on Twitter at GetIndieNews, and we will update you on any changes. And also, if there are any stories, help me out in my boredom. Help me out in my rut. If there are any stories that you would like us to report, whether local or otherwise, let us know on Twitter at GetIndieNews. And if Reef and I like it, we will consider, obviously we'll give you credit, but we will report out on it. So I think we might need to start doing that just to kind of break the monotony of what is out there. So yeah, we want to challenge you guys. If there's anything that you want us to report on, let us know. As a way to engage you all. So, but we're done for tonight. Yep. And I can go to bed.
Appreciate everyone showing up
a little earlier tonight.
But remember, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone.
Right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Bye. Have a great. Bye. Have a great time.